Hi, Francesca. How you doing? All right. Thank you so much for submitting your work. I hope everything got cleared away with the issues that you were having. It's certainly my pleasure to be able to help you out, and I hope that you're back on track now. If not, let me know, and we'll make further accommodations. But I know that you had missed getting your work assignment for critique, so I'll go ahead and do a video critique right here, just so you have, so you're not at a disadvantage. Due to missing that critique post. So let's go ahead and jump right over to the work. I've got your work set up right here. Okay. And I think it's a good start. I'm going to close that down a little bit so we can see it. I think it's a really good start. I think that you have some, let me get that camera out of the way a little bit there. So I think you have some really good ideas here. Generally, it looks like you have pretty good control over InDesign. So that's fantastic. But there's a few things I want to talk about. Now, there's a couple of things that are problematic in this particular piece. And the first one, I think, is the fact that you're using stock images. We can see that little watermark right there. There's one there. And then here's another one right here. I think these are from iStock Photo. I'm not positive. Or actually, these are from Adobe Stock. I can see the A there for Adobe. So the fact that these have a watermark on them indicate that they are not free for use, and that you need express permission. This is relevant because if in the case that you want to show this piece is a portfolio piece, you're telling the viewer that you're not that you're using images that you don't have permission, and that could be problematic, as you could imagine, for a potential hiring agent, etc. I also think that you're really super heavy on the use of image in the layout, and I think that's, again, I think that's problematic. I think that points to issues regarding hierarchy, and the fact that right now you've got such heavy use of image here and this really, really heavy frame right here, that it seems like if you take a look at this, it seems like the last thing that the viewer has on their mind is jumping right to the type. And again, the reason for that is the fact that there's so many heavy, visually weighty, heavy visual embellishments here that it's the hierarchy is shooting straight to the images. So the type is basically and seems to be almost an afterthought. And I don't mean that to sound discouraging at all. I'm just trying to be as critical as possible here. So what you want to do is you want to create like a nice synergy between type and graphic elements so that the graphic elements don't overpower the type in the layout. And I think to a very high degree, that's exactly what we're seeing here. Another thing I'm seeing here is the fact that we're not adhering to the grid. Remember the grid, it's a four, I've got the grid right up here. I had set this up. And so this is what the grid looks like. It's 4 columns on each page, right? And I think there's 40 rows. But the fact that there's 4 columns, right now we're indicating a 3-column grid here. So right now this the layout here is telling me that it's not adhering to the required grid that we had used in setting up the document. It's an easy fix, and I think it's one that probably will definitely improve the layout because of the fact that this 3-column really creates really short line lengths. And the relevance here is that you have areas like this, like right here, where that Alphonse is one word, and then underneath that is one word in a sentence, in a line, and that's not appropriate for typography. Character count, optimal character count is anywhere between 45, I'm sorry, about 49 and 70 characters or so. And that includes punctuation and spaces. So and that's basically in between 7 and 10 words. And right now there's some here that have 3 words. So these, the character count here is entirely too short. And again, the significance of this is the fact that it really creates eye fatigue. Short um, um, line lengths create eye fatigue, as so do long line lengths. And the reason being is because short, you're going, okay, you're going right here, and then you're jumping right back here. Then reading a couple words and jumping right back here. Reading a couple words and jumping right back here. So all of that movement back and forth creates eye fatigue, and it creates a situation that quite likely the viewer won't be able to finish the article simply due to eye fatigue. The super long line lengths also work against you in that fact that the viewer is reading all the way to this line, then having to come all the way back here and then do the same thing again, causing eye fatigue, increasing the probability that the viewer will not complete the reading selection. And of course, as a designer, that is your intent for the viewer to successfully read the article. Okay, so a couple of other things I want to mention here, and there's a couple of inconsistencies here. I'm going to zoom in to see these, but this is really strange. This is a sans serif typeface right there. I'm sorry, that's a serif typeface, but the rest is sans serif. And we see that in a bunch of different areas. It's so strange, but right here, okay, then the next line under that, called Maurice de Bruhoff, that's a serif typeface. And then we go back to sans serif. Then right here, here's a little sentence of serif type. There's another one. There's another one. So can you see these inconsistencies? It's really strange. But for the most part, you've got a nice typeset with this sans serif typeface. But then just intermittently, these are kind of worked in here, these serif areas. And it's really strange because one of the really weird things is, as you can see, I can select the sans serif typeface, but the serif typeface, I can't even select that. So I'm just not sure what happened there. But you will definitely want to reconfigure that to get a consistent presentation of typeface throughout the entire composition. Okay, now what I would recommend here is going back to that 4-column grid, right? But this time what you're going to do is you're going to take 2 columns and you're going to span 2 columns for your type. So in other words, what you would do is this would be your type box right here. And what I'm going to do is just going to change that so it's really easy to see. But this would be your first column of type. Okay, and then this would be your second column of type. Okay, and that would of course come down. So the baselines would be even, right? So that's what your type would look like as opposed to having those really short text lines. So you would have 2 columns of type each. Here, let me show you. So you'd have 2 columns of type on a page, each one consuming 2 columns within the grid, separated by the gutter between the columns. Okay, and that's definitely going to improve the layout considerably. Let me just reduce the size of this a little bit more. Okay, so yeah, that's definitely going to improve the type there. Now what I want to do is I want to take a look at the first page, and I want to show you a couple of really neat layouts here. This is a great layout. It employs a lot of excellent techniques. So we have the headline, then we have the deck head. Now I notice that you've got a deck head on yours, and that's a great idea, but this illustration is just consuming so much hierarchy. Well, I would remove it completely. I would remove all of these frames, and I would allude to Art Nouveau based on typography. This is a great typeface right here. So what I would recommend doing is you've got this decorative typeface here, and then you've got another decorative typeface here. So you're mixing two. I'm not sure that's the same typeface. It's hard. I'm not real sure if that. Let me see something. Trying to figure out if that's the same typeface as this. If it is, what I would recommend is using a larger a scale of this sans serif typeface to configure the deck head. I would remove this frame right here. So you've got this nice, beautiful typographic composition right here, How Posters Became Art by Hua. I would move that up right about there. Then right underneath it, create your deck head right there. Right, I would left align that and not right align it. So just left align that deck head. You can skip that New Yorker July 2019. So you've got the headline area, the deck head, then a little bit of space, and then start your 2 columns of type right here, and then continue it over here. Okay, a couple of neat tricks that you can do here over here is to separate the types, and so it's not so densely packed. It's not such a daunting task to look at and say, wow, that's a lot of type I want to read. Quite often we will add things like this pull quote right here, or a call out. Basically what that is that's just a part of the type that is enlarged and placed in here. If it's got a quote from the type, it's called a pull quote. If it doesn't have a quote, it's called a call out. So you can just select a little interesting piece of type here, create a call out right there. And that gives this wonderful little resting, this kind of little resting space. And the viewer will definitely appreciate that. Let me see. Okay, the drop cap should be an actual drop cap. So right now you've got this You've got this text wrap around here to accommodate that fleur-de-lis right there. But so if we remove that outer frame and typeset this traditionally with no word wrap, the cap A would be the drop cap. Try to go 3 lines deep instead of just 2. I think it'll create a much more hierarchy right there. Okay, what else do we have? Okay, so yes, again, in summary, so you have headline, deck head, then you start right here. So the drop cap would be over here where the paragraph starts, the story starts. So you go from here. So a deck head, of course, type would be bigger, like you have here. Then you would start your regular typeset, 2 columns here, each 2 columns for the grid. So you've got basically 2 columns of type. One here, each 2 columns wide from the grid. Same thing over here. Call out or pull quote. A couple of other things that you can do is add an image with a caption. There's a nice caption right there. You got the feature story article right there. And then we've got these kind of subheads right here that are also indicated with drop caps, but they're not as prominent as the drop caps indicating the beginning of the story. So you could theoretically introduce, and I'm not sure if these would have subheads here, if any of these would have subheads, but subheads are a great way to break up the story into smaller digestible parts. Okay, so as far as your typography goes, I think you're looking pretty good. You've got a couple of typographic widows, and that's something you don't want. There's one right there. There's one right there. Typographic widow is widows and orphans are kind of interchangeable anymore. Theoretically, this is a widow, and that is a word that you find alone on a line that's at the end of a paragraph. An orphan would be the end of a line, like let's say this end of this sentence right here, and then you had a new paragraph right here. So an orphan would be where this line sits up alone. A line of a paragraph sits off on its own, and then a widow would be a word that sits off on its own. You want to avoid both. The only other thing I see is your rags. I think the rags in the 3rd column could be adjusted a little bit. You're pretty good right here. You get that swoop right there. You probably want to adjust that through, and then maybe make these a little bit more even. Rags should be looking something like these are great right here. These look great, but you don't want any of these wavy patterns. So quite often that would entail either pulling a word up from the following sentence up to the last sentence, or even reconfiguring, respacing, so you would place your cursor right there and shift click to bring that down to the next line. Try to reconfigure like that. No, it's not a big deal. Rags aren't as prominent in typography as they used to be. So unless they're really, really uneven, I think that they would be okay. Okay, so those are my recommendations moving forward. Now, if you run out of room, don't forget you can always put a little continued on page right down there. So instead of just having it stop right there to say continued on page. And also you can add your page numbers here. And then finally, I would not include these bars right here. Again, it's framing things in. It's not allowing the page to have this nice relationship with its surroundings. It's kind of boxing things in. So I would recommend not including those. All right, so great start, fantastic job. If you have any questions, comments, or you need any clarification whatsoever, please let me know. I'll be glad to provide that. Any questions or clarifications. All right, great job, great start. Thank you very much.